Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be refuting a speech regarding obesity. My opponent's main claim was that if obesity was considered a disease, it will have a negative effect on the economy and obese patients. My opponent's secondary claims were, one, if obesity is labeled a disease, it is unlikely to reduce health spending, rather it will increase it. Her second was that modern medical procedures for weight loss are proven to be ineffective compared to natural weight loss, so there's no need to be funding them through insurance. And third of all, would be that research on obesity suggests that calling it a medical problem may actually stigmatize it more than it already is, which could decrease a patient's self-esteem, increase pessimism about one's ability to change behavior, and reduce one's motivation to do so. So for her first claim, which was if obesity is labeled a disease, it is unlikely to reduce health spending, but rather it'll increase it. There's no actual credibility to the statistics that she provided. How do we know these statistics are accurate on a governmental level if we're talking about health spending? My opponent originally mentions that the nation's health spending was $220 billion in 2013. She basically throws out numbers without a credible source and exaggerates parts per billion to emotionally appeal those who are taxpayers, which is all of you. According to the CDC, or the Center for Disease Control, which is a federally implemented institution, the estimated medical costs were $147 billion in 2013. This page was last updated last month, which provides evidence that these statistics still hold true. The second claim that she made was that modern medical procedures for weight loss are proven to be ineffective compared to natural weight loss, so there's no need to be funding them through insurance. My opponent does not realize that there's many obstacles to natural weight loss. Most of the people that apply for any type of bariatric surgery are in need of it immediately, rather than taking several months to naturally lose the weight. For example, according to newhealth.net, for people that currently have whole diseases such as diabetes and cardiovascular problems and obtain those procedures, lose 25% to 80% of their body weight and recover or contain their health problem as compared to those that do it naturally. Even though natural weight loss is still effective, it can backfire if the person loses the motivation or has either underlying conditions that provide a barrier to exercise or to lose the weight. For example, I have a personal experience with that. My mom had a Roux-en-Y bariatric surgery, which means she got a gastric bypass, which reduces the stomach size down to a fist. But unfortunately, because it also depends on your insurance as well, but unfortunately it only covered 20% of the $36,000 that she had to pay for the surgery itself, and she had serious cardiovascular problems before the surgery. So I feel that if it was funded through the insurance fully, it would be easier for people such as my mom that had cardiovascular problems to pay for and able to afford something that's actually effective for her health. The third point was that research on obesity suggests that calling it a medical problem may actually stigmatize it more than it already is, and it decreases a patient's self-esteem, and it increases pessimism about one's ability to change behavior and reduce one's motivation. My opponent begins with research on obesity, who then continues on by not providing research, but rather quotes on two doctors that present their studies of nursing and not psychology, as my opponent suggests by her claim, from very unprecedented and unprestigious universities. Wouldn't someone be more accepting of a truth if it came from someone that dedicated their time at universities such as UCLA, which is most prestigious for their medical programs, and not someone from the Urban Institute or the University of Wisconsin? So for example, here is what Aaron Bladesdell, a UCLA psychologist that did a psychological study on rats for 6 months in 2013, had to say about those who are stigmatized. He said that overweight people often get stigmatized as lazy and lacking discipline. We interpret our results as suggesting that the idea commonly portrayed in the media that people become fat because they're lazy is wrong. Our data suggests that diet-induced obesity is the cause rather than an effect of laziness. Either the highly processed diet causes the fatigue, or the diet causes obesity, which causes the fatigue. So overall, my opponent fails to argue that the correct and credible information by exaggerating statistics regarding your tax dollars to appeal to you, the audience's emotion, by also failing to realize that most people that need bariatric surgeries need it immediately to recover from diseases such as diabetes and cardiovascular disease symptoms, and finally failing to provide no research but rather quotes from uncredible and unprestigious sources without any scientific study to support it. Thank you.
Got an eval form to go with that? You could take that one.
Okay.
Put your name on it, though.
Okay.
All right, all the structural stuff is fine. The signpost on the first point was clear. You challenged the advocate's statistics without giving us any basis to doubt those particular statistics. The one thing that you do is present a counter statistic suggesting what the actual amount is. And I needed a comparative because by the time you got to that, I forgot and wasn't aware of what the number was that the advocate was talking about. It sounds like you were in essence saying that it's exaggerated, that it's still a lot of money, but it's a substantially less amount of money than the advocate is talking about, and I didn't hear how much less it was. So even at the end, when you did a good job summarizing that argument, I think contrast would be helpful there. On the second point, I think you make a very reasonable argument here, that is that a lot of these medical surgeries that are designed to address obesity might in fact be necessary, and they could be life-saving based on the diseases that are going on. So if we are spending a lot of money on those things, that it's a good thing as opposed to a negative sort of thing. I think that's a good way to kind of turn around that particular argument. You've got the personal example that you talk about. I think that there's probably a lot more data that shows that those kinds of surgeries have also benefited other people. The financial barrier that exists is probably accurate, but we've only got the one personal example as an illustration of that point, so a little bit more information on that would have been good. Also, I think you should contrast your argument a little bit to the argument that was presented by the advocate, and I didn't really get much reference to the advocate's argument on that point. On the issue of stigmatization, it was never clear to me why this was important one direction or the other. I think you've got an interesting argument that says that the source of the problem is really the diet that people have that causes them to behave and change their behavior, and rather than the other way around. The attack on the evidence that the advocate uses, I think, is a little ambiguous. I'm not exactly sure why a study that comes from a nursing group as opposed to a psychology group is less valid. From my point of view, UCLA is not any more credible than the University of Wisconsin. They're both major national universities. Now, I don't know who the Urban Institute is, so maybe there's a little bit of a justification in making that argument there. But that just sounds like it's a stretch. You're pressing for something to say here, and so here's something I can say, and then you just say it. And so it probably not necessary. Stick to the other argument. I thought your summary was pretty effective. And I thought you did a good job, for the most part, explaining your arguments as you went along. And like I said, at the summary, you kind of sell those points one more time as you're going through. If only you could look at us a little bit more while you were doing that, it would be even more convincing. All right. Thank you.